So I kind of guessed we were going to have this radio silence on my side, and I kind of guessed that it's going to be too long a morning for everybody just there listening to me speaking. So the idea behind the breakout sessions is twofold. One, it's a chance for you guys to discuss some of the stuff I've been speaking about. Two, it's a way to break up a very long morning into something a bit more, let's say, entertaining and a bit more meaningful. So the purpose now, so you're going to get assigned to a room according to your country study group. So you're all in assigned groups already according to your country studies. So you're going to end up with your team in a room. The rooms are numbered. So you're going to be in breakout rooms 1 through 7. So you go and figure out what your room number is in a minute. The first thing you have to do is figure out who your room captain's going to be. So you need to have one person that's going to host the whiteboard if you need to. And that person's going to have to report back to the whole group. So each room is going to get a 2 or 3 minute chance to report back what they've discussed. I'm going to set the breakout session for 12 minutes, which should be enough for you guys to discuss the topics, right? So the breakout rooms are designed that I will be able to jump between them. And if anybody's got a problem, you can send a message and I should be able to figure that out. What I want you to do is the groups that are in odd numbers, right? I've got a question for you guys to discuss. Based on what I've told you so far this morning, and based on what you've read in the paper, what information does the contractor need to know in order to be able to determine a cost for the BIM deliverables? And how could the contractor estimate a cost for BIM? So the principle in the paper I've given you, this is a notional project. I've called it the Hong Kong University Electrical Car Parking Facility and Research Facility, right? So based on the lack of information, what information do you now need to be able to work out a cost for doing BIM for that project? So if you're in groups 1, 3, 5, and 7, I want you to discuss how you would price what's in that particular document. If you're in the even groups 2, 4, and 6, what are the responsibilities of the client and the designers in the period before and during the construction period in relation to BIM to support and enable the contractor? So before you would actually, if you're acting as a contractor and pricing that document, what would you reasonably expect the client to be doing? And what would you reasonably expect the designers to have done before and during the construction period? And these are for discussion. So I'd like you guys to discuss them in your groups and then report back what you think are the main points from each group session. Okay, so we've got everybody back in the main session. So all I'm going to do is go through the rooms one by one and get your room captain to report back. And there are 2 questions to report back on. 1, how did you use rooms, the breakout rooms? And 2, what's the response to the question that you were set? So can we have the room captain from room 1 to unmute and tell us what happened? And you've got 2 minutes.
Hello, this is Andy from Group 1.
Hey, Andy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. From our group, we think the capacity of the project will have direct influence on the cost for utilizing BIM.
Yeah.
For example, for a more complicated structure, then the cost for utilizing BIM will be higher. And also, we need to consider the cost for acquiring the software and provide training to the project stakeholders. So
okay.
all these will affect the cost for utilizing the BIM in the project.
Okay, good. Yep, that's valid. Yep. Any other things that you discussed or came up with?
If the project participants have experience to use BIM before, they will have a more simpler life, and it will be more smoother to acquire BIM, and they can result in lower cost.
Okay, Andy, thank you for that. Okay, so room 2, can we have the captain from room 2?
She just replied to your text. She said she has audio.
She has the audio problem. Ah, okay, I just saw the text. Yes. Okay, let's try group 4. Who is the captain of room 4?
Yeah.
Hey, Wing.
Hello.
Okay, so Wing, what did you guys discuss? What did you come up with?
So there are 2 phases, before and during construction. And
yep.
For before construction, basically, the client's main thing during both process is to give their requirements in a clear way and what they want actually.
Right.
And the designer, they will help with translating that into like construction terms. And basically before the construction, they have to make a good record of what they discuss and what information is available, so that during the construction, when the contractor's on board, they need to tell that clearly to the contractor.
Okay. Good. Okay. Anything else from your room or group?
We did say if someone knows BIM, or maybe the client got someone to, they could help with the modeling, or that can be transferred.
Okay, so knowledge of BIM is useful. Okay, good. Thank you. Group 5, who we got? Who's the rep from Group 5?
Is Jenny here?
Hey, Jenny.
Where did the client provide the baseline model for the contractor?
Finally, someone came up with it. Yes, baseline model. Yeah.
And the frequency of reviewing the model, and whether it is used in the monthly progress meeting for program reviewing, the level of detail.
Yeah, they're all important issues. Yeah.
And whether the contractor got the experience, and whether the team have the skills. If not, we need to provide additional training costs.
Okay.
And probably consultant costs too.
Yeah. Yep. So here's the news for the whole group. You always have to provide training costs. So it's like I said earlier on. Somebody, I think it was Ellie was talking about the specifying the consultants. You basically always have to provide training. So when we do projects now, we always have a budget for training, regardless of whether we think they've got experience or not. We basically make an allowance that we have to do a certain level of training. So, so the question then becomes, do you get the clients to wise up and put training as a line item in the BQ? Otherwise, it doesn't get priced. So then you start getting into a different argument about how you actually allow for the training, but training is crucial. Okay, good. So let's try and get feedback from Group 6 before we break for a coffee break. Is anybody there from Group 6?
Yes.
Hey, Tiffany.
Hi. So first of all, our first point is that BIM requirement should be included into the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, from the client side, maybe there would be a consideration to include budget into as a part of BIM.
Yeah.
Thirdly, there should be progress check for the set up by the contractor, monthly or by season.
Yeah.
As to assess how useful is the BIM program.
Okay. Yeah.
And from that point, maybe the payment can be set up accordingly to these progress.
Yeah, you can link the payment to progress. Yeah. Yeah. Spoken like a true client.
And then also information flow from the designer to make sure that the information does not get excluded in the process of transferring to the contractor, because that's what usually happens when a lot of people is handling the model.
Yep.
And then,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So we've got 1, 4, 5, and 6. Does anybody have any? Can somebody from Group 2 come back? Have you got anything? Does the Group 2 have any feedback? So we have a rep. Who's the representative from Group 7? I'm guessing it's Wendy.
Hi. Yes, you guessed right. We answered the first question. So what information does the contractor need? So from the paper, we made a list of all the things the paper is already saying is required for the contractor to do. Yeah. And from that list, there's the BIM execution plan. Yeah. There's a whole series of models, different models they need to do. And then at the end, the ownership belongs to the client. Yeah. And then the contractor is responsible for hosting the VDR sessions and the CDWM sign-offs. Yeah. And they're required to hire BIM manager and BIM coordinators for each discipline. Yeah. So that's quite a lot of work to do. And then to estimate how much that would cost for the contractor needs to know the size of the project. Yeah. So one of our members did a BIM project before, and she said her project is less than 1% of the total construction costs.
I should hope
But,
so.
but because the requirement for this seems to be, you know, more stringent than hers, so therefore we think it's probably about 1% of the total construction costs, taking into account hardware costs of like BIM workstations, software costs of installing all the Revit, etc., and then manpower costs.
Which is huge, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you for all the responses. I'm not going to try and hack into group 2 and group 3. All I will say to you is that I've given you that PDF as an example of one client and how they've specified it. And the first problem that I identified when I've actually used a real document. I've cleaned it up and I've sanitized it so you can't readily figure out who it was from. But the first fundamental problem is, regardless of the complexity of the project and regardless of the level of experience of my staff as the contractor, and regardless of the client's experience, the first missing is we have no idea how much detail the consultants have actually managed to put into the models. So we don't know, are we going to be starting from zero, or are we going to be starting from a very well detailed, very well coordinated model? So the first thing we have to get our hands on is, what have the design consultants done so far? And a bit like the Q&A we had earlier on about appointing consultants, the default for contractors is that they will assume that the consultants have produced a crock of shit. And what I mean by that is that they may well receive an architectural model, they may well receive a structural model. If they're really lucky, they might get a building services model. But any competent contractor will look at those models and going, they're not coordinated, they're not detailed enough, I have to start from zero. And then the next thing you will have to figure out is, if you are the contractor and you want to gauge the client and designer's responsibility, that document does not cover the speed at which the designers and clients have to resolve issues. So the contractors will find issues very, very quickly. The problem for the contractor is, how do we manage to get answers to RFIs from the designers? How do we manage to get clarifications from the client? How do we get the client to sign off on variations? Because that contract is written in a very onerous way, and it puts all the pressure back on the contractor to solve all the design problems, which is completely unrealistic. So as a contractor, I would be writing a very heavy caveat against that specification and going, I'm not doing any of this unless I get commitment from the owner and the designers to resolve RFIs within 24 hours or 48 hours or some very quick time frame, because otherwise I'm going to end up doing all the coordination. And effectively, for all of you designers out there, architects, engineers, when someone says they're doing coordination, in my world, that means they're doing design. And if I'm doing the design, then I'm taking a risk. So contractors are very often put in a situation where they're having to do coordination, which should have been done by the design consultants. And this is the problem with this BIM. The BIM spec I've sent you is putting way too much onus on the contractors. So there's a question come in from G. What do we need to equip ourselves to deal with the future demands of BIM instead of just training? It's insufficient for all parties to get training only, as the training may just take a few days. It's not enough to get familiar with using the BIM if we don't use it in daily operations. Unfortunately, daily jobs for the role of engineers, QS, normally do not use BIM. Brilliant question. So there is no easy answers to this question. My recommendation is that if you're in a role that you want to learn how to use BIM, then you basically have to take the leadership, as we say in our business, take ownership, and learn how to do certain things yourself, and find other people to enroll in you using BIM on your project. So the easiest way to do it is, if you're working in a consultancy and you want to try and get ahead of the curve, then just do BIM in your project internally to start off, and learn how to build an architectural model, learn how to build a structural model, but learn how to do it with a number of people. Don't do it in yourself. So we don't believe in everybody becoming skilled in everything. So if you're a more senior person, you may well want to get your technicians to start building models, and you start using something like Navisworks to review them or something else. So you've really got to think, you've really got to figure out a solution to this question that suits your particular situation. If you are in a project management situation, or you're in a client leadership situation, then you have a better chance to mandate BIM on a project. And if it's a bit scary and someone says it's going to cost 1% of construction costs, which is actually a ridiculous number, too high, I'll come to that in a minute, then pick an area of the project where you think there's going to be most value. And to be honest, 80% of buildings are not going to see benefit from BIM. 20% of projects will, and those 20% are the most complicated parts of projects. So for example, Steve cited the vent shaft on a train station being so complicated. That would have been a very useful exercise just to do BIM on that part of the project. So it could be a plant room, it could be a facade system that's complicated, it could be a bus transport interchange, it could be an interface of an existing building, and get BIM for that and not do the whole project. But it's a case of, unless you're going to start using these processes and put them to play in a project, you're right, doing a 2-day course in the CIC BIM Academy is not going to help you learn. You've really got to start using it in a project, but you need to work with other people in a team. That's my way of doing it. So we have a strategy in Gamuda where we basically mandate every project uses BIM, and if we're getting a new project, we will take people from an existing project and do a skills transfer. So we'll take competent staff, we'll blend them with people who've got no experience, and we'll do knowledge sharing and knowledge learning, but we'll do that on a project. So we'll actually take on and do a project that way. So you've got to have a strategy for yourselves that's going to suit your particular circumstance.